My name is Randy Gomez. I'm with Kevin James here, my good friend. Uh, Today we're going to do step two. Step two is one of those steps that, you know, like Kevin just was telling me here before we turn it on, that you have to keep an open mind every day on it.
Right.
Not just when you start talking about this. You have to have an open mind in everything. Before I started working these steps, um, I just was a tad bit narcissistic.
Back then?
You know anybody like that?
No. No.
And then if you don't stay open minded, what can happen to you?
Well, you can get back into believing some stuff that's not true, and we know what happens then.
My sponsor used to always say, Gomez, you're one of those guys that say, hey, all we've been doing is talking about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? you know,
Right. Right.
and sometimes we get like that. It's funny to say that, but it's reality sometimes.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you something. Yesterday, was talking to a friend of mine that's in the program, and I know he didn't say it to hurt my feelings, but all of a sudden he tells me we were talking about a family member of mine, and I said, well, all she can do is talk about herself, and he said, well, it must be in the genes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yeah. He must know y'all well. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you think, I'm not like that anymore. You ever get that
Well.
holier than thou feeling?
Well. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That old head will blow up. And yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we talk about. It's a daily reprieve.
Right.
It's a daily reprieve. I think we're talking today about step two. What's step two, Kevin?
Well, step two is the solution, and the solution is only as good as my understanding of the problem. And came to believe. It doesn't say came to know. It says came to believe, and it says believe what? That a power greater than ourselves could, not would, could restore me to sanity.
Well, restore. You know what I like about step two? You said me, and I'm not trying to correct you here,
Right. Right.
but it says correct us.
Right.
Because
Right.
because that's another thing that you learn in this program. All the good stuff is us.
Right.
You know,
Right. Or we.
or we.
Right. Right.
Have you noticed that?
Right. Right.
And because all the bad stuff, it's easy for me to take my position in for a short period of time.
Right. Right.
One of the things that I'd still do today, whenever I start having issues, I say the serenity prayer.
Right.
And I say it, sometimes I have to say it 15 times in a day.
A few times a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's say it, Kevin. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And how easy that can remove anxiety.
Right.
That can remove the me out of it.
Right. Right.
It doesn't have to be me. And I'm sorry I interrupted you. You said that you were doing the second step two.
Right. Right.
So start off where I interrupted you.
Well, like I say, came to believe. It doesn't say I have to know anything. And then, I don't know about you, but me, when I first was introduced to this, I'm sitting in treatment, and when you hear power greater than yourself, most people say God. That's what they think. And a lot of us, when we come in here, we have a hard time believing God wants anything to do with us, especially after what we've done.
Amen.
And so, when I was sitting in that treatment center, 3 or 4 days sober, some people who really knew the program said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to substitute the fellowship, that's a power greater than you, and the program, the steps, a power greater than you. And they asked me, do you believe the fellowship and the program can help you. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, if you believe it can help you, you must have did step one to see you need some help. And if you believe those two things can help you, you pretty much have just laid step two foundation. But um, a lot of us, when we come in here, we struggle with the God idea.
Oh, sure. No question.
And if we hadn't struggled with it, we never would have ended up here.
Right.
Yeah. And I have a little thing I use. I put God up on the board. And I ask them, how many of y'all struggle with this? And some will raise their hand, some won't. I said, well, all of us could raise our hand, because if we didn't struggle with it, we never would have got here. So I take it and I put another O in there. And I said, just do good. Just do good.
Good, yeah.
You're supposed to get up and make your bed, make your bed. If you're supposed to put a cigarette butt in the can, put it in the can. Just start doing good. And that's how I sort of got started coming to believe. But the last part of step two, restore me to sanity, a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, I'm not crazy. I do some crazy shit, but I'm not crazy. And insane really doesn't mean crazy. It means not whole.
Right.
Yeah. And restore me to sanity. Sanity means wholeness of mind. And so what I sort of ask them, do you believe that you can be restored to whole? And step two is again the solution. But Randy, a lot of us, you, I'm sure, me, I've been to treatment twice. You've been how many?
9.
When I first got it, the first treatment, I didn't understand the difference between the fellowship and the program.
Yeah.
I thought they were the same.
Same, sure.
And a lot of people do. And the fellowship is good. And that's where I go to the meetings. I get support. I'm with people like myself. But that's not enough.
No, I agree.
That's not where the real power comes from. The real power comes from taking the steps, where the steps are in the book. And that's where the real power comes from. And so one of the things I really, really try to do at Woodlake, at education, is get them to see the difference between the two. How many times did you leave treatment and just go to meetings?
Well, yeah, and not get plugged in.
Right.
Right. Sure.
Right. Yeah. So I sort of look at it like a PTA meeting. If I go to a PTA meeting, that surely doesn't make me a parent. What makes me a parent is I have to take some action.
Sure.
Yeah. So the fellowship and the program, two powers greater than me. That's what I sort of focus on. And do you believe? You don't have to know, just believe. Can they help you? And so that's sort of, a lot of people, they think step two is this long, drawn out process.
Right.
And it's not. Based on step one, if you see where you're at, then the solution falls sort of right in your lap.
Sure.
We were talking with a guy yesterday, been to treatment 5 times. And I asked him, I said, what do you think you keep missing? And he says, well, I think I keep missing the solution. I said, well, I don't think that's what you miss. I think you miss the problem.
Right.
Because if you don't understand the problem, the solution's not going to do you any good.
Right.
And he looked at me and he went, you might be right. I went, yeah, I think so. I said, the allergy. I said, do you understand? He said, oh yeah, I get that. I said, but the obsession, you keep going right over your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that obsession is going to take a power greater than me to remove it.
Right.
And that's where step two comes into play.
Yeah, no question about it. And if you look at it, like we talked about those first 103 pages last week.
Right. Right.
I think they're so connected. Everything is so connected. I think for me, when we go to those meetings, what do they read? They read almost at every meeting I go to. Really, they read how it works.
How it works. A portion of how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that is so real. So we talk about iron sharpening iron.
Right.
That's iron sharpening iron. That shows us every time we go there, we get a little bit better because we start understanding how it works.
We were talking, the sort of spiritual principle behind step two is being open minded.
Sure.
Yeah, and open mindedness for me, uh, I had to get a lot of ass kicking to become open minded, to believe something different. And that first time I went through treatment, I still thought I could stay sober, go to a couple of meetings, and keep doing what Kevin wanted to do. And I really wasn't open minded to change a lot. I wanted to change the consequences, but I did. I mean, I'm good.
Yeah.
Who needs to change me?
Yeah.
And in about 3 years of getting my ass tore up some more, I became very open minded to believe just about anything except what I had been believing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it hurts you.
Oh, it like damn near killed me,
Almost killed
and all the people who cared about me.
you. Right.
Yeah, but you had to go through some trials and tribulations to become open minded.
Sure.
Yeah, and even today we were talking. Sometimes my mind can snap shut again.
Yeah. Without
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
It's just like working out a bicep.
right,
You can work it out and that bicep look good. You quit working it,
right.
and it doesn't take long for it to
It
get.
doesn't take long at all.
No.
Yeah.
Uh,
But how many times have we, things are going good for us in our life, and we start to think, that chest pokes out, and I'm doing it, and God will say, well, okay, you little dumbass, and he'll drop something on us, a little consequence to try to sort of wake us up, bring us back home, and open that mind back up again.
yeah. One of the things I always tell when I'm sponsoring someone, and and they say what you just said. I have a problem with God.
Right.
Saying God. And they'll oak tree, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I always remember in a meeting one day, a guy said, you know what people in a burning building scream? Help.
Right.
And then if they're in that building long enough, you know what they scream? God help me.
Right.
You know, also
Right.
they might not believe in God,
Right.
but all of a sudden that building gets a little hotter,
Correct.
and
Yeah.
they start saying, "God help me."
Right. Right.
And it's so real.
How many meetings have you been to where you've heard this before? Well, I'm gonna make that tree my higher power.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I sometimes when I hear it, I cringe and I start to think, yeah, and I'll get a chainsaw and cut your higher power down too. The people who really started this, they talked about the method of substitution because they knew we were all struggling with the God idea. But what they were talking about substituting wasn't an oak tree, it was the fellowship and the program.
Amen.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people get that method of substitution confused.
Right.
But, if I'd had to, when I first came in here, if you would have asked me, do you believe God is going to, I would have went, well, I don't, I think God sort of pissed off at me, which he wasn't, but that's what I believe.
Sure.
And so I just started to believe in the fellowship and the steps, and I just tried to do the next thing right. Whatever it was I perfect? No. And by doing that, it got me started. And that's what started to get me to believe. When I got to treatment, I had to come to.
Yeah.
And once I came to, I was able to come to believe.
Yeah.
When they come to us, they in detox, and I say, yeah, you coming too. And after a couple of days, I say, now are you ready to come to believe?
Right. Sure.
Something different.
Yeah.
Just something different.
And that process for people, it's different for everybody how they do it.
Absolutely.
Yep. I got a call to New Orleans last year before last, and there was a 6'10", 300-pound Jewish attorney. And so he tells me, I just want to tell you, I'm not going to say anything about God. I know that serenity prayer says, God grant. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I said, well, let me ask you a question. Can you say group grant, that meeting?
Right.
Group grant me.
Right.
Can you say that?
Right.
He said, can I think about it? Sure. It's totally up to you. And he started saying it. And it took him about 6 months. I mean, because everybody's different.
Right.
And when they get that spiritual awakening, and we were had 45, 50 men in a meeting, and it was right before Thanksgiving. And you talk about that meeting, you go to these meetings and you get to know these people.
Right.
You get to know the good and the bad about them.
Right.
And he had one of those voices like that, big
Right.
booming voices.
Right.
And he said, God grant me. And when he did, about half that room cried.
Right.
I mean, it was emotional. It
Right.
touched a lot of people. So sometimes the bad, no, I don't want to say bad, when people can't, when they do,
Right.
it's spiritual. It's
more of an impact than somebody who is sort of spiritual.
Sure,
Yeah.
no question about it.
The first two steps, seeing the problem, understanding the solution, or believing in the solution, and two, that's what sort of opens me up to step three, making the decision. And you said that when everything sort of intertwines, I look at them like the steps like dominoes.
Sure.
When you knock that first one down, the rest of them fall just like dominoes. And one unlocks two, and two unlocks three. And I know we're on two, and we've talked some on that. But if you understand the problem and you believe in the solution, it's time to make a decision. And that's where step three sort of comes in. And I ask them like this: Do you know what step one will get you? And yeah.
Yeah.
I said, do you know where step two will get you? You can't know because you hadn't did it yet.
Right.
Do you have to know in two? No, you just have to believe. So we know what one's going to get us, and we don't want to stay there.
Right.
So it really doesn't leave me but one alternative. Yeah.
To believe.
I make a deal with everybody that comes through Woodlake, and I've worked with a bunch of them.
Sure.
And I tell them, if you do this for 1 year, just exactly what we tell you, the meetings and the program, and you don't like the results, bring me your big book back, and I will refund all your misery.
Yeah.
And I have not had one taker.
Yeah.
Because if they're doing what we say, there's no way they would bring me their big book back.
Right.
And if they're not doing it, they couldn't find the book to bring it back to me anyway.
And also, if they're not doing it, we don't have to guarantee their misery back because they already got their misery back.
Right. It's there.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
It's theirs.
Yeah. But look, I'm not saying that just because I say it, it's the right, but I don't think a lot happens in one, and I don't think a lot happens in two. We give them facts in one, and we give them facts in two. The fact is, you either have the obsession and the allergy or you don't, and in step two, it works.
Sure.
There's 3 million of us. We're facts.
Right.
Right. So you have two set of facts. You got to decide which facts you want to operate on. And you've been operating on one.
How's it work for you?
Not very well. So we got to start operating on a different set of facts.
Yeah. And two, it's so easy to start. We talked about that backsliding.
Right.
It's so easy to start. And when I first got into the program, I said I had to say that serenity prayer sometimes 10 and 15 times a day.
Right.
But the longer I'm in the program, the longer periods of time I believe I have. Now, my wife might tell you different.
Yours too?
My friends might tell you different.
Yeah. Yeah. You say the serenity prayer, where I just step back and go, okay, God, I need a little direction here. You know,
Sure.
it's the same thing.
Well, it's like what you were taught.
Right.
And
Right.
I had my sponsor to instill that in me to say that,
Right.
and it does, you know,
Right.
and then if the more you get into this, last week we had the Life Recovery Bible sitting here,
Right.
and it has a Psalms in there, and I'm telling you what, if you read that Psalm, it's all about the program.
Right.
It's the program. It talks about wisdom and how it instills wisdom in you. It talks about always doing the next right thing.
Right. Right.
You know,
Which we always don't do.
no,
Yeah.
no,
And that's where the other steps 10 come into play. Continue to take my
mine
inventory.
personally.
Yeah, not yours,
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
And
Oh, I can take yours well.
well, yeah, we good at that. But I know we sort of getting to our little time here and all, but talking about inventory, the people that I've been around who continue to take their own inventory, this is what they know. They're still sick.
No, without question.
And the ones that quit taking inventory, they get well and everybody else
Gets it.
gets sick. You ever notice that?
Oh, without
Yeah.
question. You know,
Yeah.
if you had to tell somebody one thing about what step two has done for you personally, what would you say?
Open-mindedness.
Yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
right.
Man, I look, I like you and a lot of people like to think we're open-minded.
Right.
And I can be as long as you agree with me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But the second you have a different opinion or does my mind snap shut? And so open-mindedness, man, that's a big word and that's a big thing to have. And I like to think it's helped me become open-minded to believe not just what I want to believe, but what you believe.
It's so easy to say open minded.
Right.
It's hard to put it into practice
Right.
on a daily basis.
Right.
It,
When you came in here, was this full of shit?
oh, big time.
It was like compacted,
Oh,
and nothing new could come in. But when I opened this side of my mind up, it's like all that stuff got sucked out,
right.
and there was nothing up here, and new stuff started to get. And that's when I started to become open minded. When I let all that old stuff go.
Yeah. And one of the things for me was, in a meeting, there was a guy that had 50 years of sobriety. And he would tell you it every time, I got 50 years of sobriety,
Right, right.
And he lived probably another 20 years. I don't know what he died with, but it was
Yeah.
well over 60 years. But he used to always say that, God designed you pretty well. He gave you one mouth and two ears.
Right,
You should listen twice as much as you talk.
right.
And if you do that, you can learn so much more, and you can learn that open mindedness.
Right.
And
Right.
you're more pliable.
Right.
You're not going to be all about me.
Well, look, I'll tell you this. I've been around you for what, about 12, 13, 14 years now, and it's like the older we get, I think the more open-minded you've become over the years. And I like to think I'm the same way. I have some people like wife tell me, no, you're not.
Yeah,
but do you think you've become more open-minded?
I think it's I get that daily reprieve to be open minded, and
Right.
I get into that, and I'm gonna be honest, I can fall back into the
Yeah, well, we all
yeah,
can.
but I really do believe it's something that I've worked hard at,
Right.
and but when I say I worked hard at it, it's easy because I can see the difference that people around me,
Right.
they're different because I'm different.
Right. Right.
Kevin, I think that you have become a lot open minded, and I tell you this all the time, about your little girl.
Right.
Lily is how old now?
She's 5.
Okay. Now, in those last 5 years, do you think it's had a big difference in your life?
Absolutely.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I think it's because we need to have people in that meeting that iron sharpens iron, and we get stronger because of them.
Right.
But we also need to have people that we depend on,
Right.
and we need to have people that depend on us. And it has to be a reciprocating agreement.
You know, God works through people.
Amen.
And if somebody's scared to tell me the truth, then I'm actually shutting God out. So I have to become open, at least to listen.
Sure.
You know, we may agree to disagree, but at least I'm going to listen to you.
Yeah, one of the things I try to do in business is that I try to be the last one to talk.
Yeah. Well, we all know sometimes that don't work too good.
I say it to every meeting.
Right. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do.
But I agree. Sometimes it's a rare.
Sometimes we don't. Yeah. I'm sure when people on our executive team listen to this, they're gonna start just laughing.
I had a shot. He doesn't listen. But what would you want to tell people out there about step 2? How can this?
Well, I would just say this in closing: that step 2 will do you no good unless you see the problem. You know, you've heard of the prodigal son.
Sure.
What he tell his father? I want my inheritance, and I want it now. And so he gives it to him, and he spends it on wine, women, and song, like one of us.
Right.
And he ended up in the pig pen, like one of us.
Right.
So he's in the pig pen. He's shucking and jiving, slopping the pigs, and he tells the guy next to him, he says, you know, I think the servants are eating better at my father's house. He says, I'm going back to my father's house. I'm in the pig pen. The guy next to him says, hell, man, you've been in the pig pen. But until he saw where he was at, he couldn't see anything better.
Right.
So I have to see where I'm at in 1 to see something better in 2.
And I think this program for me, it's put that ring on my finger that his father put on him, and that robe on his back.
Right.
You know, and every single day I feel, because you know shame will kick your ass.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm not saying it's totally removed, but a good bit of it's been removed.
A good bit. And we had some other steps to take care of that, like 8 and 9.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's amazing too. We still got a lot of people coming up to us. I remember when you
Right. Right.
I know you've never had that before.
Oh Lord, I go, oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, this might not be great for y'all, but I'm gonna be honest, it's great for me.
Look, the first time I'm driving over here, I'm going, man, I really am not. But this is our 3rd one.
Yeah.
And I sort of look forward to it today.
Sure, same here.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. God bless you, and we'll be back next week.
Yep. Love y'all.